Real people having real conversations. Let's go beyond the surface and find the pieces of the past that make people who they truly are. This is the Blueprint Banter. Welcome to the show. Joe Hayho with Community Choice Credit Union and the Blind Pig Basement. Do you is it the Blind Pig or is the basement part of the name?
I refer to it as the Blind Pig. The Blind Pig Basement Pub is the social media handle, just
Gotcha.
because there were a million blind pigs already, because it's kind of a synonymous term in the whiskey industry.
Yeah, well, there you go. Let's go with the Blind Pig then for this sake. This is the Blueprint Banter podcast. This really came about because people in our industry, that we get to talk to on a regular basis, we have awesome conversations that oftentimes go in depth beyond just surface value or surface level, um, directly related to the building game or finances or whatever it may be that we're talking about. So thought it'd be cool to start interviewing some of these conversations, get a chance to know people that we do business with a little bit better, and also just kind of highlight what they're all about. So thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So I guess we can start with when we first met, I think it was Mark Mills essentially brought your name up to
like a networking group.
Yep.
Which I admittedly have been very bad at showing up to those meetings.
Yeah, that group's tough. It's become a little bit more of just kind of a social thing. And it has been tough, but nonetheless, it's cool whenever somebody obviously gives you an introduction, then it's kind of a warm, intro, and just seems to work a little bit better. But you are on the mortgage side of things. If you want to explain a little bit, maybe just kind of how you got into mortgage lending, what led you to Community Choice?
Yep. So I have been in mortgage since January of 2012. Started at Wells Fargo, kind of back in their heyday. It was centralized. So it was basically in a call center environment, doing mortgages all over the country. I mean, closing 100 to 200 loans a month easily. And stayed at Wells Fargo for about 5 years and then transitioned over to Community Choice. Been here about 7 years and just kind of started to build my brand a little bit locally. And that's a much better fit than picking up a phone and talking to somebody I'll never see again.
Yeah, I can only imagine. What was that landscape like? I feel like 2012, there was a lot of recency bias, I'm sure, coming out of the 2008, 2009 landscape. So cold calling and mortgages, how do those two?
No, it wasn't even cold calling. At that point, we were literally hit a button and the phone would ring. And I would say when I first started, probably 90% was refinance business. So people refinancing from, 7 or 8% down to that point, high fives or high fours, low fives. But it was, for lack of better terms, it was shooting fish in a barrel. There was no shortage of opportunity.
No kidding.
Yeah. It was go in for 8 hours and take 20 apps. It's very rare that you would pick up the phone and it wouldn't be a deal.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So these were, we can just kind of get into this, I guess. Like, this is interesting to me too. Like, these were warm deals that were kind of already established, like by Wells Fargo?
So I would say probably 90% of the deals we were doing were existing Wells Fargo clients.
Okay.
So they're calling in, they want to refinance. Maybe they got something in the mail or got a phone call from a call center, something along those lines. And then they made their way to us and literally took an app and in a lot of cases talked to them for 15 minutes and never again.
Yeah.
Especially on the refinance side, because then it would go to a loan processor and they would handle absolutely everything from that point forward.
Whether you did an incredible job and made their decade or did a terrible job, you really just, it was kind of just out of your hands then. Not that you would ever do a terrible job.
No, and that's kind of the thing back then is like I was proud of they captured our fallout rate. Okay. So from app to closing. And mine was always super low, but there were guys in there that you throw shit at a wall and see if it sticks.
Yeah.
And then that's where you run into those issues of, well, now you're getting bad surveys back and you're getting all these different variables that affect your paycheck. And then those guys are getting hurt because of that.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to be a little bit mindful as far as there's going to be more opportunities. So it's okay to say no to somebody if it's not going to fit the bill.
that there's, people often say that there's a lot of power in the word no. And it's true.
Yeah.
Not every client, for us with Showtime Homes, I mean, it's the same way. Just not every client, and we might not be the builder for them either.
Yep.
It doesn't always have to fit,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes it just doesn't. And it can maybe be a timing thing as well,
Yeah.
which in financing, like you guys have to deal with the timing of things a lot.
Yep.
People are in between jobs. I mean, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Now, Wells Fargo was a wild time. I always say I miss the people I worked with. I'll never miss the place I worked.
yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, it, it seems like I talk to a lot of people that are in the mortgage game that have like started at Wells
Yeah.
Fargo or have at least worked there
Yep.
once. Obviously they cast a big net in the market for sure. But what do you think? What do you think? Did you finally just decide like, hey, I need a little bit more interaction with my clients, and ultimately kind of pushed you to that move?
A little bit of that. Most of it was I dusted off my resume right when they started getting fined for opening up fraudulent accounts. Like I saw the writing on the wall and knew that, hey, if you're getting fined billions of dollars, that's going to impact business, which is going to impact my livelihood. So that's really what got me out of there more than
Gotcha.
anything. Yeah.
So then, how did that search go for you then? Just
I did so I had a gig lined up as an internal wholesaler doing in the financial gigs like annuities and things of that sort.
Okay.
Did that for about 90 days. Hated it. Hated my life. Hated everything about that 90 days because I was taking the Series 6, Series 63, life insurance exam, all this stuff where I would go to the office and work all day, then go home and study for
Okay.
8 hours. Um, and then finally I was like, I can't do it anymore. I got to find something else. And I had a connection at Community Choice that I had known for a long time. And she goes, you should give us a shot. And it just literally just beautifully all worked out.
That's
I
awesome.
honestly the timing could not have been better.
It seems like there's definitely you can try to plan as much as you want for good things to happen, and I'm not saying that like planning doesn't work, but there's a certain level to like sometimes I don't want to say accident, but
Yeah.
it's crazy how things just unfold
Yep.
sometimes, and all of a sudden did it kind of hit you like this feels good, like
Yeah.
this feels
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what it was because I was kind of sold a little bit on that intermediate position I took right after Wells, and then I got there and it was just for lack of better terms, it was a miserable job. I mean, there were people doing very well, and I mean the potential was there, but it's not. That was back to your point. That was more on like the cold calling side of things, where you're calling all these existing financial advisors, and wherever your region is. Mine happened to be in Florida. Um, and setting up appointments and doing running scenarios for your external wholesaler who actually lives in that area. But it was I I would have gone insane if I stayed there even a day longer than I did.
I'm guessing high turnover in that position
It
ish.
yeah, and I think honestly it was more based on what territory you had more than anything, and kind of more based on who your who your partner was. Because if your partner was performing really well, that meant you were going to perform really well. The territory I took over had I can't even remember, maybe two or three people in it within the last 16 months before I got there. So they sold it as just this honey hole because
Yeah.
it's Florida, retirement state. You're going to have all these people that are ready to move their money around maybe,
Yeah.
and it didn't pan out.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think so you land at Community. Was there before you to back up just a little bit,
Yeah.
getting out of did you go to college?
Yeah. Yep.
So getting out of what'd you go to college for? What was your major?
Marketing.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I suppose like a minor in business, or was it
Yeah, yeah.
like
I mean, it
2 year
was a
business?
bachelor's in marketing, which was in
Yeah.
the business field, and then during college and prior to going to college, I worked at Menards in Burlington. I'm originally from Burlington.
Okay.
So right after I graduated, I was a department manager there for probably a year, probably 2 years before I moved up to Des Moines to work
Okay.
at Wells. And it was the same thing. It just got to the point where it's like, I love the people I work with. I just can't do this any longer.
Did you make the move to Des Moines then because of Wells?
Yeah.
You got that job and
Yeah.
moved? That's interesting too. I think that and that's something that really doesn't change, I don't feel like with time is you're young and you're making money now,
Yep.
you know, and you gotten out of college and you know you're department manager and you can get almost complacent. And I don't like to overuse the word complacent, but you know, you're young, you don't
Yep.
have a lot of responsibilities,
Yep.
maybe some college loans, whatever.
Yep.
It's easy just to maybe be like, hey, I can just hang out here and make some
Yeah.
money, right?
Yeah, and I think I got to the point where I was kind of starting to feel that because I lived with two buddies that I'd known for a long time. We had a nice house. I mean, it
Life's
was
great. Yeah.
life was great.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, yeah, but do I want to live in Burlington my entire life and do this gig where I mean it's retail. Like
Yeah.
I don't need to work at retail ever again. I've done it for I probably did it since the day I turned 14. I started at Hy-Vee. So
Yeah.
for, 10 plus years. And I think that wore on me enough. And then just getting a taste of even traveling up here just to hang out with friends in Des Moines. It's like
Yeah.
there's so much more to do, so much more to be had. And I mean the
Yeah.
opportunities are obviously far greater than sticking around the hometown.
Yeah. I think sometimes it gets a little bit like the connotation can be that you know you have to get out and when I talk about like my personal experience, I left the area I was in, I
Mhm.
came to Des Moines area, and I this feels like home to me now. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, just the people I've met,
Yep.
I feel like there's more like-minded people,
Yep.
for me to be around, and it's been a great transition, but I never try to tag it as like I had to run away from home. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, obviously respect everybody that I grew up with
Yep.
and whatever, and so I think sometimes there can be like a negative connotation behind that, like, "Oh, yeah, he had to go, whatever," and it's
Yeah.
like, no, I just like that's where I felt like I
Yeah.
was gonna be fulfilled,
Exactly.
you
Yep.
know, so that's cool. Well, at that young of age, it's important too, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes people don't feel that way until they're 35,
Well,
40,
it's
and then
hard.
they
Yeah, it's one. It's good it happened when it did to me because like if I would have had a family or whatever the situation may have been, if I had kids at that point or whatever, that's going to obviously make things
correct.
way more tough to uproot everything and move away.
Did you at that time, was it a supported decision, like, family-wise and
Oh yeah,
stuff, or was it like,
absolutely. Yeah, hundred
go do you and
hundred percent,
yeah,
100%.
which that always helps too.
Yep.
So you alright, so then you, marketing obviously, you had some ambition then. I mean,
Yep.
if you wanna go into marketing and you're doing something business related, you know, tend to be creative, you know, all
Yep.
those attributes that it would take to be in marketing. So again, kinda makes sense why you would start feeling like, "Oh, this I maybe need a little bit more
Yeah.
than this."
Yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
the best way I needed more excitement.
Yeah.
Is I mean that's the best way I can put it.
So you get to community choice then and immediately on the mortgage side of things, again, or how did that transition go?
So I actually started as a consumer loan officer or account executive who basically did, credit cards, home equity loans, auto loans, open accounts, all that stuff. So again, I was coming out of that other position saying I'll take whatever just
Yep.
to get out. And then like we kind of discussed, and I wouldn't call it an accident, but more maybe even fate. Like the day I started at Community Choice, the mortgage loan officer that was in our Clive branch actually quit and moved to another financial institution. So our HR lady calls me on the first day I start. She goes, "Hey, come into my office." I'm like, "Oh shit." So I go in there and she goes,
Yeah.
"Hey, I don't know how you feel about this, but we have a mortgage opening now." I said, "I'll do it."
Yeah.
100%.
Day 1.
100%.
That's
Yeah, day
crazy.
one. Yep.
That's awesome.
So she told me that day one. Day two, I went and met with our VP of mortgage, interviewed. He came from Wells years ago, so I mean, we clicked. He actually worked at Menards as well years ago, so
Oh,
we
yeah.
had a bunch of
Yeah.
of uh, of
Commonalities for
connections
sure.
there. And then, yeah, I mean, it could not have laid out any better than it did.
So what, like what year is this or what kind of
That would have been 2017. Very, yeah, early 2000. Right about 7 years ago now.
had you started family then, married?
Yes, had one kid, not married yet. We got married in 2018, second kid in
Yeah.
2019. So yeah, I was at the point where it's like I got to figure
Yeah,
out what's going on because Wells Fargo was great, took great care of me, and then it was just like I got to keep the train rolling.
absolutely.
Yeah.
A little bit of added pressure whenever, there's more
Yeah.
You know that you're the only provider. I'm not sure, I guess, what your wife does, but just definitely more pressure. Like, hey, I need to be the best version of
Yeah.
myself I can
100%.
be. So,
Yep.
no, those are always that's an interesting time. Whenever, um, I don't think I probably understood the weight or like the magnitude of what it meant to be a dad, first of all, obviously.
Yeah.
Like nobody really does until it happens, I don't
Exactly.
think.
Yeah.
But professionally, the kind of mind shift that I felt that was just it was natural. Like
Yeah.
it's not like I woke up one day and heard a, you know, I don't know, some speech
Grant
or
Cardone's on the car
yeah,
radio
yeah.
telling you to
God,
10x. Yeah.
just dreaming. Has anybody in your space ever talked about Grant's math?
No, but
Grant Cardone math drives me
we
insane.
can come back to him because
Yeah.
I
Okay.
went on a trip with a bunch of real estate agents to Vegas one year to go to his conference out there.
Yeah.
Really, I went to Vegas just to party, but
Yeah.
that was the reason we went out there.
Also,
And it just yeah.
I have some things too. There's takeaways that I like or that I think a person can look at it and be like, yeah, that's a nugget that I want to
Yeah.
kind of adhere to. But yeah, that's the whole thing. We'll
Yeah, he
definitely
was
get it.
saying something. I saw something the other day where if he said if he ever made less than 400,000 a year, he wouldn't feel like a real man.
Yeah.
I'm like,
There's
there's
some of those things where
yeah,
it's just like, why Grant?
yeah.
Like you don't need
You don't
to.
have to say that. You
Yeah,
don't have to say
correct.
it.
And it's yeah.
But yes, fatherhood. I mean, the best way I put it is you're not just working to get by anymore because you're fine. You're paying your bills, you're having fun, you're saving money,
Yeah.
whatever. But then once you have that child and a wife and a extended family and whatnot, then it's like, all right, now I got to
100%.
grind just a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Make sure I'm doing things the right way so it keeps rolling in.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I grew up, I wasn't I always had clothes, I always had food.
Yep.
But we were definitely like we did not have extra money to do things,
Yep.
and I was always cared for. I don't want to make this impression that I wasn't, but it wasn't easy. We
Yeah.
talked about money a lot in my household.
Yep.
Split family, parents were divorced, both filed bankruptcy at different times, and you see that stuff. And for me, it was more or less I always kind of, decided in my own head that when I become an adult, like I'm not going to have that in my life.
Yeah. Yep.
And I did not just start off on this to the moon trajectory by any means. I mean, in my early 20s, I was kind of floundering. It felt like a little bit.
Yep.
In late 20s was kind of when I made the mental shift, but having my son on the way was like, okay, let's go.
It wakes you up.
Yeah, it does. For sure. So yeah, the weight of that is obviously important.
Mhm.
So you get rolling with the mortgage side of things then. One thing I want to touch on before we get out of you as a mortgage lender or in the mortgage space is what I think is interesting on the home side of things is how different people kind of operate and have their own personal brand, if you will, on the mortgage side of things. It definitely seems like when you talk to somebody from, X mortgage company to B mortgage company, there's a whole together different feel.
Yeah.
Do you think, or how did you kind of, coming out of the Wells Fargo space, say this is the type of mortgage lender I'm going to be?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even as much as like something like personal branding and things along those lines, you're going to see vastly different from a credit union to a bank to a brokerage to any other institution. And I kind of got in a little hot water early on at Community Choice of kind of branding myself like Joe Hayho, the mortgage lender, and not Joe Hayho at Community Choice.
Okay.
Because, for lack of better terms, I was just naive and didn't at that point realize the power that we as Community Choice have, vastly more power to saying that than Joe Hayho. Like it's, so I think, my biggest thing that I've
Do you have
done,
any, to just speak on that, do you have any specific examples that you want to share of maybe how you were trying to overbrand yourself versus the company? Or maybe you can't touch on it.
No, I can. I don't. Yeah, I laugh about it still, and I was just giving shit to our CEO a week or two ago about it. So, the gal that I knew really well that worked at Community Choice that got me hired on was our head of business development and kind of marketing at that point.
Okay.
And they made one day they sent me a text that said, "Hey, take a picture of yourself with sunglasses on." I'm like, "What the fuck do you mean?"
Yeah.
So I do it, send it to them, and then they made the caricature that's my email signature now, and I've got a
Yeah.
poster on my wall and
It's
whatnot.
iconic.
Yes. And I went a little overboard and I got some t-shirts made. And then everybody in our branch at that point were wearing them on Fridays. And then everybody else kind of caught wind of that. And then I get called into a meeting and I walk in and it's my boss, our CEO, our chief lending officer, our compliance officer, marketing director, HR. I mean, it was just a bunch of people that you don't want to really walk into a meeting with.
Yeah.
And they kind of just had a heart to heart with me and said, "Hey, we love what you're doing. Love that you're getting out there. Love that you're branding yourself, but we got to be cognizant of the fact that you're Joe Hayho at Community Choice.
Okay.
Because everything you do out there, it's not like I'm in a broker situation where anything I do, it's just my reputation it's fallen back on. I still have the financial institution behind me that I've got to be aware that anything I do that tarnishes myself also tarnishes them as well. So yeah,
That's
they reeled me in a little bit.
that's super powerful though. Because I talk about, and even with what Sean and I are trying to build here at Showtime from a culture standpoint is I think it's important to I think every employee needs to have somewhat of a personal brand themselves. Like they need to care about their own identity as well.
Yep.
If you outgrow your position or become more than what is required of you here at Showtime, like I want what's best for you moving forward, right?
Yep.
And part of what that is your personal brand. I mean, everybody that you interact with on a regular basis, you're kind of representing who the human is that you are, right?
Yep.
But alongside that, the company that you're also getting paid by.
Yeah.
Was it more of like the team aspect thing though? Like, was there other people that you felt like
Yeah.
were maybe just like, okay,
Yeah,
I work
mean,
here too,
I
and
think
I'm
it was definitely a lot of that. There was probably a good amount of that in it. And again, like just me being naive and not even I didn't even think any of it through. Just kind of ran with it. And I think, a lot of people got slaps on their wrists for that. But I mean, we all came out on the same page. They're not saying, hey, you can't be
right.
yourself. You can't try to build your own individual business within us. But if somebody asks, who's Joe Hayho, they should know that he's with Community Choice.
That's fair.
And the amount of power that comes behind that, I was unaware of at that point. I mean, we're massive in the area. We've got our own internal marketing, our sister company, Choice Creative, who wins literal worldwide global marketing awards year after year. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't leveraging the things I probably should have. And again, that was within probably the first 6 months that I was there, roughly.
That makes sense because in the infancy of your employment there, if somebody just sees or hears about Joe Hayho, the lender, without knowing their, like, if they find out that you're with Community Choice at that point, maybe they're more apt to like, oh, he's with Community Choice, and I already am familiar with them, and so maybe that makes a lot of sense.
And that's the part that I didn't grasp right away because I think that puts me on a different pedestal by having that behind me.
Like let the platform help build you up 100%. Along with yourself. I like that a lot. I mean, we try to, it's a delicate balance. If you're in a role where you need to be creative and you're trying to grow a brand, even help grow their brand, not specifically even just community, but anybody that works for any company, you have to have a sense of buy-in yourself. Yes. And so you're representing yourself and you have to feel good about what you're selling. But also, let the brand help you build that platform as well. So that makes a lot of sense. Well, as you continue then kind of like cutting your teeth, if you will, with community and kind of settling in, are there things that you kind of focus on? Um, you know, I'm going to steer people into good financial situations. I care about, because there's a lot of that when we talk about the mortgage game, and we don't need to get any specific scenarios necessarily about individuals that things that maybe went good or bad, but there's a lot of that you hear about in the mortgage game of, oh, somebody's just trying to get a commission or whatever.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of?
Yep. The best way that I put it, and it's going to sound entirely cliche, it's like, I'm going to treat you as if you're my mother calling me to take out a mortgage. I'm going to put you in a position that I think is going to financially benefit you the most. At the end of the day, I'm going to give you the decision of what route you want to go, but I'm going to present all of these options in order of importance and give you the pros and cons of each. And my job, I mean, I get paid the same regardless of what type of loan I write. So
Yeah.
none of that comes into play whatsoever, whereas other places it does.
Mhm.
I think that's one thing that we've got a little bit of a, I don't even want to call it a leg up, because I would hope that everybody is doing things how they should, but
Right.
it's the nature of the beast. So yeah, it's just a matter of educating everybody and making sure they're aware of what decision they're making and why they're making that decision.
How much of that education piece of you staying up to, obviously you guys probably all get fed the rates
Yep.
through community and through your channels, but how much of that market awareness, I guess I'll just call it, is up to you to kind of personally educate yourself, and how much of that is like more corporate, if you'd say?
Um, we're a little bit different than, say, a broker shop. I mean, most banks and credit unions are going to operate the same way as far as, I mean, the rate is the rate. I don't have any control over that more than anybody else in my office does. I think it's just more a matter of, especially with how volatile things have been even these past couple of weeks, is educating the client of, hey, you know, things are looking like they're going to improve a little bit. We can either hold out and lock your rate in, or you can lock it in now if you're comfortable.
Yeah.
With all of that, especially right now, it's just a matter of, I want you to lock in when you're comfortable with the payment. Hopefully something will come up where you can potentially refinance in the future. But the most important thing is, if you lock in that payment right now, are you comfortable making that for the next 10, 15 years?
Yeah. Let's leave refi out of it.
Yeah.
Just, are you comfortable right now? Does
Yep.
that make sense? Let's not stretch it just because you think in 2 years you
Exactly.
can. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that'll
I
never, I
like.
mean, that just won't, it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and you're also setting an expectation that maybe just isn't realistic.
Yeah.
So, because you can't control the future. So yeah. What
100%.
about so one thing, I guess this is just more or less me being curious sort of, is like in 2021, as things kind of came out of that COVID stage, we were
Yeah.
seeing things that were selling above list at times. We were seeing things that were selling sight unseen.
Yeah.
Um,
That's crazy.
the appraisal game seemed almost like it's not, I don't wanna say appraisals didn't matter, but, it was just, it was a wild west. So how did you sort of navigate that yourself, or, like, through community,
Yeah.
of saying, "Are you sure?" You have a client sitting in front of you, like, "Can I get approved for 650?" And you're sitting there going, "Well, it was listed for 630.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here?"
I think with that, the biggest thing is, especially during that period of time, I always set them up for worst case scenario. I'm like, hey, the house is listed for 630. You're willing to pay 650. If it appraises for 630, you're bringing in the gap.
Yep.
So I make sure that is, all those are email communications, so that if they say, well, what the heck, you never told me that. No, look, you
Yeah.
agreed to it. Because
Yeah.
I thankfully didn't have, I don't even, I would say the most I had somebody offer over was probably 10 to 15,000. So not crazy, but still you're offering above list price.
Yeah.
Um,
If you have the liquidity to
if
do
you've
it.
got if you've got the means to do it, you're comfortable with doing it, and it's the house you want, at that time that's kind of what you had to do. You didn't
Right.
have a choice.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean,
Because if you
inventory's
didn't, somebody
low.
else is going to.
Yeah. That's an interesting, somebody else will, that drives a lot of decisions in business,
It does.
honestly.
And
Well,
it,
in personal
and it's not
finances.
even like, not even saying that as like a sales tactic. It's
No,
like,
it's
this
just
is the
real.
reality
Like,
of
it
it.
will not be on the market
Yeah.
tomorrow. Are
Uh-huh.
you prepared to make this
Yeah, the
move?
amount of people, like, that was a time where, like, if you go and look at the house, you've got to be ready to make an offer before you walk back out the door.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be 3, 4, 5 more people lined up to see that same house that day, and one of those is going to do it.
It was interesting for us, so a lot of realtor connections and friends that we have, being in the building game and doing remodel, storm restoration work, whatever. One of the aspects of the business that we get involved with is when there's a transaction happening on a house and there's something that needs to be done to it, right? And during that time, it was, hey, can you come out and look at this just so my buyers are aware? We're not even, or like, to the severity maybe of
Yeah.
what it could be,
Yeah.
but we're not even really worried about quoting or anything.
We just want to know. Yeah.
Yeah, we just want to know, like, is this going to be okay for 10 years
Yep.
or not? Because the seller's not going to budge,
No, not at
because they
all.
didn't have to.
No,
And
not at all.
so it was a really interesting kind of dynamic on that level too of, you know, us telling them, hey, this is not an ideal situation, but I also understand that you have to do something.
Yeah.
So, but I always felt sometimes you'll get brought into a situation, and I by no means will bash realtors. Everybody's out there doing their thing. Some builders have a bad name, right?
Sure.
We could go down every industry line.
Oh,
But there's obviously people out there that just want to get a deal done.
yeah.
And so there's been times where like I get brought into a situation and just speak the truth or document things that I see as an issue. And it's like, well, hey, whatever. And it kind of
Yeah.
it could make the deal go sour. But in that time frame, it was Wild West stuff.
It was. Yeah, I mean, and then bring in the fact of COVID and everything else, and the restrictions of who's open, who's not open. Like it was a wild couple of years, and then throw in the fact that you're talking, interest rates under 3%. Like,
Funny money.
yeah, people were wanting to buy houses because of that more than anything. And then at that point, they almost justify in their own mind of, hey, yeah, I'm going to pay 40 grand more, but I'm paying 40 grand more at 2.5%.
Did it seem to you, because whenever we're in an industry, sometimes we can be a little bit, um, you kind of have the blinders on, but you're so absorbed in it all of the time that maybe from an outside perspective. But did it seem to you like all of a sudden the low interest rate almost got celebritized to me?
Oh, 100%.
It was you
100%.
might not have even ever thought about how much a point of interest would change your payment
Yep.
ever in your life.
Yep.
You were in at 5.2 in the mortgage you had.
Yep.
You're just going through life, doing your normal everyday thing, coming out of COVID, obviously,
Yeah.
nothing was normal.
Yeah.
But you're not, and all of a sudden it just seemed like everybody was talking about how low interest
Yep.
was. And everybody kind of fed off that, it seemed
Yeah,
like.
100%. And then I even feel like it happened again once we started to see rates go back up a year and a half or so ago. It was,
That was
hey,
the cool thing to talk
you
about.
either can buy now at whatever rate we're at, or if you hold out and the rate's half a point higher, you're going to be paying this much more.
Yeah.
And it's even, you see all the charts of, if you buy a house for $500,000 now at X rate, or if you wait and buy it for 450, but the rate's higher, you're in the same position. So, I
Right.
mean, and I get it. It's a
Well, and
marketing tactic to show
Yeah.
numbers, and most of the time they're factual, but it's never been like, I don't feel like rates have ever really driven uh, real estate as much as they have in the past 4 years, 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, I do think it's fascinating with, the power of social media. Obviously, our channels of talking about specific things seem to be, there's just so much more information out there. But I would agree on even on the building. So being in the new construction game, obviously, one of the most interesting parts to us was people being scared of the rate. It almost seemed like they just didn't want to drink beer with their buddy and talk to him about how their buddy had a 2.9
Yeah,
interest
which
rate
is
and they're
crazy.
paying 6.
Absolutely.
There was almost more of that, like ashamed, like I don't pay
Yeah.
6% interest, than it was even the financial situation
And
they were
when's the
getting
last time
into.
you were having a beer with a buddy and he asked what your
Talk about
mortgage rate
interest
was?
rates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen.
It was
but
so
people were
cool to
talking like
talk
that
about.
was the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. So, I mean, because we started early last year. We were talking about how there was a big ramp up of sales, obviously, developers producing less lots, and knew that there was kind of sort of be that head, and in the $750,000 price range plus that we're kind of building in, it's a little bit different because some of those lots are still available. But yeah, it's really interesting as construction costs came back down from that, like the commodities of like OSB for a while was $90 a sheet.
Insane. Absolutely
And I
insane.
mean, obviously, we're not paying that now.
Yeah.
Pre-cut studs were just insane. And all of those commodity things were so high that as they came back down and I would say settled into normal or average market rate, then you could almost pay 0.75% less interest just with that. Or excuse me, you could pay 0.75% more and it would be a wash. So we started even running a little bit of those calcs or trying to forecast some of that too to help educate people.
And I think you guys, the good thing about you guys and where you're at with a price point is, I mean, for lack of better explanation, interest rate isn't as impactful for somebody who can afford to buy a $750,000 house than somebody that's looking to buy, a $350,000 house. Obviously it's going to impact their payment, but they probably have the means to skate by until things maybe level off and do a refinance or whatever it is.
Yeah. Everybody needs to live in some sort of a home,
Yeah.
right? And if you're 23 and trying to buy your first home at, 250,000 or a townhome or whatever it may
Yeah.
be, and it's just purely a budget thing, then obviously it's impactful. But yeah, to your point, I mean, if it's a difference between living in this house or I want that house with a tennis court in the backyard,
Yeah.
maybe you're willing to spend $800 a month just to have that,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
but yeah, it's interesting at different price points, kind of what drives certain decisions. Maybe it's a specific neighborhood they want to be
Yeah.
in. They want to be close to the school, and it's less just about payment, more so as to convenience, being by
Oh,
the interstate,
100%.
whatever that might be.
100%. It's like everybody wants to be south of Grand
Yeah.
and they don't understand why the price is so high. And then you have to say, because everybody else wants to be south of Grand. So
Yeah.
it's you're paying for the location.
Market values are so interesting too. Right now, one of the last things that I've been doing personally, like with the help of the team or whatever, supplying data, but is paying attention to just square market cost, or excuse me, square foot
Oh,
cost.
sure. Yep.
Um, when we like a year ago, when we really started ramping up on the Showtime Home side, the conversation was kind of, this person's over here, like they can build me 2,200 square feet main on the ranch for X amount of dollars.
Yep.
And I was like, how? Like that's at our cost.
Yep.
Like there's just no way. And we're, a lot of us in the building game use the same subs. Like maybe it's not the exact same subset, but at the price point, I should say, that we're
Yeah.
building
There's
in,
the,
Clyde
where's the
Electric's going to
what
work for them
variable
too.
is changing that? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we start getting into that and really diving into, okay, what does make us different? Like what products are we using on a consistent basis?
Yep.
And it's such a wide range, right? And so when somebody's looking at, I need 5 beds, 3 beds up, 2 beds down,
Yep.
2 beds down, and they can sell it to me at 650, but we're quoting them at 800. It's like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so you start paying attention to some of that stuff. And the more I started diving into it, I found that, the lots, location was important. Maybe some of the builders that we're being compared to were using different materials.
well, the craftsmanship's probably
Yeah. It's just I'm not going to say that they do a not as good a job or the craftsmanship isn't as good, but the price point they're competing in, a $400,000 builder or a builder that wants to build on a production scale a $400,000 house just isn't using the same sub and vendor sets that we are at 800,000.
no. Oh yeah. There's no way.
And even each of those vendors that we do use will have different categories
Yep.
of materials and things that they use for that level of houses too, right? Like you're using the cheaper LVP versus the more
Exactly.
it's still LVP.
Yeah.
And so to the common person, they're like, well, yeah, they had LVP
Even
floors
looking at
too.
it, you have no idea.
It's like, yeah, that's $6 a square foot difference.
Yeah.
So anyway, just diving into that is interesting. So market, what it's doing out there, and then the rates obviously kind of combine.
It's got to be nice that material prices are they still holding steady for the most part?
I always joke with people. We never get an email from one of our main suppliers saying, "Hey, prices are
going
coming down."
No, yeah, no.
And so a lot of people kind of do that back to that drinking beer with a buddy and bragging about interest rates thing. A lot of people want to feel like they got a good deal,
Yeah,
or that
100%.
they timed the market right.
Yeah.
And I know you see this on the
Yeah.
interest rate side or refi side,
Yep.
but they do it on the construction side too. Of, well, I'm going to wait for prices to come down. It's like,
It's not.
appreciation is a real thing, and construction costs just aren't going to come down. They're just not. The cost to develop continues to go up. The
Yep.
development side has probably seen the biggest increase. It's expensive to develop
Yeah.
land in this
Well, you
area.
can just see that in the lot prices
Yeah, correct.
over the past 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people still have that, like, well, $90,000 lot, and it's like, no, that lot's 160 now.
Yeah, 90,000, you're going to get less than a quarter.
Correct. So yeah, it's interesting comparing that. We obviously try to do as good a job as we can to educating people on what they're getting into. But yeah, so branding though, we talked a lot about branding with the mortgage side of things, way to differentiate yourself. So we have to start talking about the blind pig.
Yeah.
I'll just actually let you describe what the blind pig means, and then we can kind of talk about maybe of like where the love for bourbon and whiskey came from, and then we go from there.
Yeah, I mean, the blind pig, super high level, is just a speakeasy that I built in my basement about 4 years ago, coming up on about 4 years ago at this point. And just had space in our basement that was perfect for it. And really just kind of came about as an idea, literally sitting at our kitchen table with a couple buddies drinking whiskey one night. And I was like, I'm going to build a fucking speakeasy in the house. And I think my wife was at the table too. She goes, what did you just say? I said, I'm going to build a speakeasy in the basement. And I think, we had probably had a couple glasses, so nobody was taking me serious at that point. And then I remember for like a couple weeks after that, just kind of drawing up because I had a space and I knew where I wanted to do it. I had to knock a wall down to make it a little bit bigger. But I spent like so much free time just looking at like finishes, ceiling tile, how I want to build a bar stool, like everything that would go into it. And then I kind of drew it on it, which I still have the piece of paper, my little layout of it. And then I remember I sent a text to my dad. I said, "Hey, are you free?" It might even been the next week. I said, "Hey, are you free next weekend to come up and help me start the speakeasy?" And then it just snowballed.
Love that.
Just absolutely snowballed.
There's nothing better than when someone doubts you or, I don't want to say doesn't take you serious, but pretty much like when they don't take you serious, and it's just kind of like no, I'm doing this.
And my wife, like we've been together for 10 years, more than 10 years. And she knows that like when I have an idea, I'm going to do it. Like I'm going to do it. Like we did a video when I first built it. And the voiceover was me kind of talking about it. And I said it was built out of my love for bourbon and my inability to ever half-ass anything.
Yeah.
And it just
I love that.
Snowballed.
Yeah.
Snowballed quick.
I mean, I love the whole thing of it just because of like even now knowing how it started too is even more cool of just people doing ambitious shit.
Yeah.
Like it is fun. I mean, people joke with me all the time. I mean, starting this is just like, why, dude?
Yeah.
Like chill out, sometimes. But no, I think that's awesome.
Well, it's like,
You're
why
just
not? Like what? Why not?
Because someday I'm going to be 85 in a nursing home bed and wish that I didn't.
Not have any cool shit to
like,
show people pictures of.
And even if it fails miserably, at least, I mean, at least I can tell my grandkids I tried some stuff. If I just, you get to that point, and I don't know how you feel about it, but you get to the point someday where you're at the end of the road and you look back and just say, oh, I wish I would have tried that.
Oh, 100%.
Like, I mean, you just feel empty. So
absolutely.
But not to get too deep. But so you decide you're going to start it. To say that you're going to build a speakeasy in your basement, though, had to have like a love for bourbon and stuff like whiskey before that. So like,
I mean, like even in college, one of my drinks of choice was whiskey. I mean, Crown and Coke or whatever it may be, Jack or whatever. And then as I kind of dove further, because it's a rabbit hole, like it's a rabbit hole that has no end in sight. Once you kind of dive into it and learn the appreciation of it and just the time that goes into it. I mean, some of the stuff you're drinking has been sitting in a barrel for, 8, 10, 12, 16 years. Somebody had to, A, take the time to actually make that product, but B, have the foresight to think, well, shit, in 10 years, somebody's going to probably want to drink this. Like that's the craziest thing in my mind. Man,
I've never thought
that's about the craziest thing in my mind about whiskey and bourbon and a lot of really any
wine
aged spirit.
We can even talk about
wine. Any aged spirit is like, yes, you're basing your production on current consumption, but you also have to base your production on what you think consumption is going to be once that product is in a bottle and on a shelf. Which is, I mean, there's more. I can't remember what. There's more barrels of bourbon in Kentucky than there are people. It's like there's more pigs in Iowa than there are people.
Isn't there a country song that like speaks to that?
Something there probably is. Yeah, there's probably 15 country songs.
I mean, let's face it, country covers everything. That's why I love it. But that's interesting. I've never had anybody articulate it that way to me. I've never talked about it. I've also not talked a lot about bourbon. I'm like I like makers guy. Just the I'm not a connoisseur.
You're a Busch Light guy.
Sure.
And that's all that's in the fridge.
And I'm proud of it too.
Yeah, 100%.
But that doesn't mean though. But I'm getting to the point where I'm curious now. Like, what is the hype about all this stuff? And I mean, I've seen your stuff on social media now for the last year, and every time I see one of your videos, it's just like, I just need to like try or like kind of get into that world a little bit.
I think honestly, for me, the biggest thing that will make you dive down that rabbit hole is just you form the appreciation around what you're consuming. I mean, I don't like I don't ever approach it like I rarely like during the week am down there a couple times a week filming videos. Like I'm not getting hammered by it. And it's rare that even on weekends, like oh, I don't drink to get drunk. I drink to enjoy the spirit that I'm drinking.
Let's talk about that for a second because I've seen some comments on your videos about like promoting
Oh,
like
people,
drinking.
it's insane. You can't. Yeah, the internet's a dark place when you
The
get to that.
it is, and we can even talk about this more because it'll beat you up, and the fact that you've continued to produce content and do the videos that you do, I think is remarkable. I also you have a very unique and amazing sense of humor, I think.
Sure.
Like, the
Yeah.
way you kind of, de-escalate a
Well,
situation
that's
by
I'm just a smartass.
yeah,
That's
and you're
I can't.
quick-witted.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it,
I can't.
and
Yeah.
you comment back at people, but it's funny to me because to me, it's clear the environment that you're doing it in,
Yep.
it's in your house in your basement, isn't a party. Like, you're not down there just sloshed, like, doing
Exactly.
these
Yeah.
videos. Like, it's very
Yeah.
put together. You're articulate. You can
Yep.
tell you're intelligent. So it's funny that they take the time to comment the hate, but I also appreciate the fact that you're like, no, like, that's not
And there's a lot, and it's. I mean, it's the internet, and
right.
I try not to be too much of a smartass, but it's like I'm also very cognizant that there are people that don't have self control or
Yeah.
can't operate in moderation in those types of environments. I know that 100%. So I think it's just maybe the generalizations that oh you're making a video and you're drinking, you're an alcoholic. It's like
Yeah.
no, it's like I'm not gonna like yes, this bottle only cost me $60. There's people that'll pay 8 times that much. I'm not just going to down it in one
Yeah.
night. Like I'm drinking it to appreciate it. You appreciate the flavors, you appreciate the history of it, the process that goes into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, on those any video that kind of takes off or goes viral, it's there's
Like, I
just
can still walk out of this
so
speakeasy and
many.
go put my kids to bed.
Exactly, hundred
Like,
percent.
yeah.
Like it. I had a. I won't name any names,
Yeah.
but I had an event. This was probably maybe even a year ago, where um, an attorney that I work with through work quite a bit, he goes, "Hey man, I just got to ask you, are you really drinking as much as you are in those videos?" I said, "Fuck no." I'm like, if, and then I said, if I was, it would be alarming. And he goes,
Right.
"Yes, 100%."
Right.
So it's kind of a, I get that perception is reality, but like if even if I'm drinking 1 dram of whiskey is no different than the guy who's drinking 2 beers at dinner or whatever it may
Yeah.
be. It's like it's just
Well, and all of that, I mean, I don't know if I wanna go down that road. I mean, when the doctor asks you how many drinks do you
oh
have
yeah.
per week,
Yeah.
potentially lie about that a little bit, but it's, the thing is you're doing it in your own house
It's a
too, and
controlled environment. Like
yeah,
I'm not driving. I'm not
yeah,
out at a bar. I'm
right.
not out with strangers.
And you're doing it in a sense that I think for me, because every once in a while on one of your videos that takes off, I'll take
Yeah.
5 minutes to scroll through the comments because I think it's humorous more or less, but I think for me, it's just contextually, like you're doing it in a entertaining way.
Yeah.
You're doing it in a way where you are educating to a certain extent, whatever bottle you happen to be talking about. And so it's like, if you can't see that out of the video, then well, whatever. Your
Yeah.
comment probably
Yep. That and the thing that the reason I shrug it all off is I will look at it as an issue when people that actually know me start asking me that question, which they never will because they know me enough that that's not what's going on
yeah,
by any means.
yeah.
But at the same time, it's
So are you an alcoholic?
I am not an alcoholic.
No, I'm just kidding. We'll get that out there for all the
Yeah,
viewers.
it's nuts though. But it's no. I mean, I get people for whatever reason. Anytime I do like a tour video, I get a lot of people that are like, "Oh, this is cool, but I can't have an eighth of weed at the house or whatever it is." Like they try to, and I'm
Yeah,
like, "You can." Like I don't give a shit if you do.
yeah,
Like you're me. Me doing this doesn't mean that I'm gonna frown upon anything else.
right.
Like I don't want to come to your house and just see you smoking meth, but like,
Also, to that point, I mean, just because I'm doing something doesn't mean that I'm advocating for
oh,
anything. Like, I'm
100%.
just trying to
Absolutely.
enjoy
Yeah.
this. And, I think that's another thing with, which I do. I wanted to like talk about this with you specifically because I do think it's important, and I think it's fair to say that you are an influencer to a certain extent in the
I hate
bourbon, right?
the
I mean,
world, hate the word, but
I do
yeah, yeah,
too.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
just because the connotation behind it is usually just kind of snarky, like I'm an influencer.
yeah,
But I mean, you get a lot of viewers. I mean, there's a lot of interaction with your posts, and if you are doing stuff locally, like I think that's great.
yeah,
Um, but those platforms, oftentimes, I mean, even this platform, for instance, is we're just having a conversation and talking about
yeah.
stuff. And to that point, like you're just talking about bourbon. You're not trying to
I'm
push
not trying to
any
make you chug it.
laws
Yeah,
about
yeah.
bourbon or weed or
No,
meth for
yeah,
that matter.
yeah,
Like, you're just talking about your things.
yeah. No, I think that's it's I guess for lack of better terms, outsiders or people that are just scrolling and see it, and then it's just people that just aren't fun. Like and not meaning they're not fun because they don't want to party or whatever it is. It's like if you had to take the time to do that,
Oh, yeah.
like what's just scroll on. That's all you got
Yeah.
to do.
Yep. For sure. I didn't seek you out. Like you came across
Yeah.
me. So, all right, when you start doing these videos, so you're in your kitchen with your buddies,
Yep.
you say you're gonna do this, you film your first video. How long ago was that, first of all? Or how long have you
I
had
was
the
trying to look back
speakeasy?
today. I think we started building the speakeasy in mid 2020,
Okay.
middle of 2020. I didn't really do anything with social media until probably 6 to 9 months after it was done.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I was taking some videos and documenting it. And that's one thing that my wife always gives me shit about is like for the longest time, I was like anti TikTok. I don't want to have a
Yeah.
TikTok. I don't want to just scroll TikTok all the time. But like if I would have documented the entire process of building it, it would have probably would have blown up
You
for
you
sure,
might have just
easily.
you might have destroyed the internet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had to sell mortgages anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just crazy how some of that stuff just takes off and it just snowballs.
Did you have the intent? So I guess I should ask, when you decided to build the
Mm.
speakeasy, was there ever a social media
No,
presence intent behind it? Or you
no.
were just like, once you had it, you're like, I should film some
Yeah,
videos then.
literally not at all.
That's
It was
crazy.
it built it as a space in the house to have, friends over, neighbors over, family over,
Yeah.
whatever. It was never like the intent of social media. I'm trying to think the first like one of the first videos I ever did, I had to have my wife help me because I think it was either off Instagram or TikTok or something, but I was like, how do I set this video up or
Yeah.
whatever? And it was the first time I did like a full tour of it and it like just through the roof.
How many views are on that one? That initial like
Now probably 5 million at least,
That's awesome.
easily. Yeah,
Yeah, that's incredible. No, it is cool. Um how you I remember the video even like because you actually show walking through the
yeah,
door and
yeah,
everything,
yeah,
right? Because do you have a hidden door situation?
yeah. Murphy
Yeah.
door.
Yep.
Yep.
No, it's amazing. I think, especially the fact that you set it up that way and didn't even have the intent of
That
creating
was
content
it.
around it.
Everything about that was based on when I had the idea. I was like, I'm going to build this, but it has to be a hidden door. It has. That's literally the only. That's the preliminary plan I had for everything, and then I want to think I even ordered the door. That's the first thing I ordered, and then I was like, well, now I got to do it.
Mhm. Yeah. There's a level of genuine though, if you just did it to build it and you wanted it and wanted it to be cool,
Yeah.
and then you're like, hey, maybe other people want to see this too.
Oh yeah, no, it was never built with the intent to plaster it all over the because I always make the joke too. It's like, I built a speakeasy that's supposed to be this hidden space, and then I just blast it all over the internet,
Yeah.
and it kind of eliminates the appeal of a speakeasy because now everybody knows about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can Eminem 8 Mile that and
Yeah.
just be like,
Yeah.
the whole I know I'm white. I know I live in a
Uh-huh.
trailer
Yeah.
park.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you just like, yeah, like I know I did it, but why not share it with other people? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I think it's incredible. I think it's incredible to document and I think it's incredible to share because
Yeah.
if you reach one other person that is like-minded or has the same interests that, you can connect with, I think it's
Oh,
worth it. I
100%.
mean, that's what
Absolutely.
literally the idea behind this is on
Yeah.
really. So that's neat. But so when that first video then was that the first video that took off or was it
Probably one of them.
just
Yeah.
like one of the first
Yeah.
10 or whatever?
Yeah.
So that takes off then and then you're like, babe, do you see how many views that
Yeah.
thing's
It was
gotten? Or
insane.
I mean,
Yeah.
like what was that conversation
Well, because she was giving me shit again because I think it first took off on I don't know if it was TikTok. I think that's right when I made a TikTok, and that's the first video I ever posted on TikTok. And she was giving me shit 'cause she goes, "You could have been doing this all along. Like if you would
Yeah.
have done this when you were building it, if you would have all that." And I'm like, I know. But I was like taking screenshots of it, and like within an hour, it was at like 100,000 views. It was absolutely insane. And then I'm trying to think.
So she helped you. If she helped you post, she's obviously been supportive of like
Oh, honey, yeah,
the whole
honey. She
thing.
gives me shit all. I mean,
Yeah.
anytime I go down there, she goes, "All right, quiet on set. Dad's going to make a video."
That's
Like she
funny.
pokes fun at it,
Yeah.
but she's 100% supportive
That's
of
what
it.
our
Yeah,
partners are supposed to do is make fun of
100%.
us because
Yes, yeah. No, she's on board.
that's cool.
And again, that kind of goes back to our conversation as far as drinking. Like, if I was a raging alcoholic and I'm down there drinking all the time, my wife is not going to be on board with that. Like, there's not nights where I'm not tucking my kids into bed because I'm down at the pub. People ask me all the time, like, "Man, you must be down there all the time." It's like, honestly, not really. Like, unless we have people over, if I'm making a drink or filming a video or whatever it is, like, I'm not just down there
Besides
sucking
that,
down whiskey
if
all
you
the
have a
time.
tough day at work on a Wednesday and you
Yeah.
wanna go down there and just blare some Zach
Oh,
Bryan
100%.
and
Yeah,
drink a couple, like, that's also okay,
that's normal.
like,
Yeah,
that's perfectly okay.
yeah.
You're in your own house, like, you
Uh-huh.
can as a grown man can do
Yeah,
what you want or a woman, I mean, doesn't matter, right? Like,
yeah.
so yeah, like, just to make that clear too is I mean, people will find a way to judge, I think, almost anything,
Everything.
but
Absolutely everything. Yeah.
so I think I'm obsessive almost over just branding in general, right? The
Yeah.
stories that come behind it, the things that people build. I think it's incredible always knowing the story behind
Yeah.
it and kind of hearing that's awesome.
Yep.
Especially, your wife's on board and kind of supports it. When does it start to take off to, you start gaining followers?
Mhm.
You have over 100,000 followers on TikTok,
Yeah, I think it's like 70, 78 or something like that on TikTok, and like,
78,000.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
30, maybe 35,000 on
Yep.
Instagram,
Okay.
something around there. Yeah.
So, a lot, right? And
Enough. Yeah.
so at
Yeah.
what point, because I can't remember, I think Mark Mills, he's the one that kind of
Yeah.
introduced us. I think he's the one that said, like, "Have you ever seen his social media stuff?" And
Okay.
I was just
Yeah.
like, "No." And like him knowing that I'm a nut about branding and
Yeah.
like social media just in general and documenting things. And so when I checked it out immediately, I was like, this is incredible. Like,
Yeah.
this is cool. Joe's got an entirely like separate brand and sort
Yeah.
of life outside of the mortgage thing.
Yeah.
Um, so I thought it was neat right away. But at what point did you start getting like maybe some of that outside recognition in public or where it was
I
like,
mean,
oh, this is a real thing?
honestly, fairly early into it. Like Murphy Door, who manufactures that hidden door, they came and filmed commercials in the basement.
Okay.
They came and filmed a bunch of videos. I had an article in Whiskey Advocate magazine, which is like the premier publication for the whiskey and bourbon world. They reached out. They were doing an article on like hidden whiskey rooms in your houses or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was sweet. And then I still think it's super weird. I'm very appreciative of it, but like being out and people recognizing me
Yeah.
is kind of weird.
Pig dude.
And I don't, it's not that I feel obligated to sit there and, shoot the shit and talk to you or whatever, but I want to make sure they're aware that I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And even like we were on a trip to Kentucky, probably 2021 ish, and like people recognize me walking around,
That's
which is,
wild.
it was weird,
That's wild.
wild and weird.
Yeah.
It's cool. I mean, it's definitely opened up a ton of opportunities to get into distilleries and do barrel picks and all of that different stuff. So I'm super appreciative of it. It's just I'm like as outgoing as I am and like social as I am, it's still kind of weird. Like I'll never say I'm a celebrity, but I can get the feel of
Yeah.
like if you're a mega celebrity, like people coming up to you all the time can be
Yeah.
overwhelming.
There's definitely a level of notoriety there. I can even tell with the different people I interact kind of in the comments and stuff. Because the other thing is, as that thing starts to take off, I mean, there's almost a level of like now Joe has to be like you have to be knowledgeable enough to a certain extent to like kind of
Yeah.
keep upholding that image. If
Yeah.
like, do you feel like there's a pressure there or no?
Kind of, sort of, but not really. I've tried to, and I've always been pretty transparent about it. I've tried to approach it more from a fun standpoint than like hey, I'm gonna, tell you everything you need to know about bourbon or
Right.
whiskey or the distillation process or any of that. Because there's a lot of great content creators on TikTok, Instagram, whatever, that are very good at that, and that's like their niche. And I'm like, that's great. I love it. I love to hear that stuff, but like I don't want to be looked at as any sort of authority or
Right.
person to go to ask maturation questions or
Yeah.
crazy stuff like that.
I
So I
think
try to keep it fun,
I like your
more than
videos.
anything.
I like your videos when you not necessarily like make fun of, but you kind of spin off of like different trends that are happening, and then you like relate it to what you're
Yeah,
doing. Like those are pretty hilarious. So I definitely get that vibe of trying to have fun with it, but also like entertaining, but yet obviously you're knowledgeable in the game
yeah,
too. So
yeah,
no, that's amazing. I mean, people will inevitably, if you're building something, there's always an opposing force to tear it back down,
yeah. Oh
right?
yeah,
You
for
can,
sure.
no matter what you build in a
Yep.
business, in a personal brand, like you're, which I mean, could eventually be a business, I guess. I don't want
It
to say it's
could.
not a
Like I
business.
and I haven't I've made money on it just through
Actually,
different things.
let's talk about that maybe more in depth.
Like Murphy Door, Murphy Door brought me on as their first, what they call it, brand ambassador. So
Okay.
like if I've got a code, if somebody orders a Murphy Door using my discount code, Murphy Door cuts me a check
Yeah.
for it. Or like distilleries or brands will reach out and want to have you post a video or a post or something about their product.
Yeah.
And this is kind of actually a present day ongoing tiff in the Instagram bourbon world, where like there's a ton of people out there that will gladly post all day long about a distillery's bottle if they send them a free bottle.
Yeah.
It's like, but I don't like, that bottle of whiskey isn't going to pay my electric bill.
Right.
Like, so it's a matter of, once you get to, I guess, more or less a certain following, it's you I think you've got to have the self-respect to ask for money as opposed to merch.
Yeah. And if you're, because in order to gain the following, you had to spend your own time
Yep.
first of all building the speakeasy
Yeah.
with your own hands, and then also creating the content. And
Yep.
people give me shit all the time like, oh, you're gonna go shoot a video, and it's like there's fucking work behind
Yeah.
this. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, trying to select clips that are important. There's been just simple videos I've done about home building that takes me 4 or 5 times because I can't talk that day or
100%.
whatever,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
there is genuine, like legit time that gets put into that stuff.
Yeah.
But so I think to your point, you should be compensated. It
Yeah.
should be viewed as a business. Do you have just with that though, do you have long-term aspirations to grow and just continue to build that, or let's just see where it goes? And
Yeah, I mean, it's thankfully I am in a good place in my actual
yeah,
9 to 5, that like I don't need to rely on anything else. But um, I mean, I think it's only going to keep growing.
sometimes it's fun too, maybe to let your passion be your passion and not necessarily have to be your
Yeah.
profession.
Yeah.
Like there could be a level to that where like,
Yeah.
well, I want to just enjoy it for the time being.
And that's the thing. Like, I don't want to ever get to the point where I'm taking it so serious that like, oh man, that video didn't do well, or that post didn't do well, or
Yeah,
whatever it is.
that's true.
That's one thing that I try to stay away from, because it's not something that's going to, it's never going to be something that I'm going to lose sleep over.
Do you ever have any flops? Like, do you
Oh
ever have
yeah,
any
for
that you just
sure.
lay an egg
Yeah,
and you're like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah.
that wasn't any
And it's
different.
usually the ones that I fucking spend more time on. And
That's crazy.
I'll never try to understand TikTok or Instagram algorithms, or what hashtags you should use, or should you tag certain people, or any, like, there's a science behind it. There 100% is. Um, and then it's usually the most simple, stupid things that just take off,
Yeah.
which is
A-
fine. I
As
mean, it's,
we've tried to, grow our following with Showtime Homes, and Alex has done a phenomenal job kind of rebranding things and trying to keep a consistent look and brand and feel, but also be indicative of who we are personally. With my branding approach, I do not like it when it's just very surface level, and I say surface level a lot, but I just when it's just cold and you don't understand the personality of who you're dealing with.
Yep.
Like we are fun, high energy
Yeah.
people, you know, and
100%. And
I
you got to get
want
that out
people that,
there.
yeah, I
Yeah.
want people that are potentially going to do business with us to understand that,
Yeah.
um, that we do have a good time. You know, if you come in at 5:30 because you just got off work and we're going over house plans, like you can crack a high noon if
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah.
You know, and just like we're humans too. Like we're
Yep.
just people. And so I think there's a level of, you know, growing a brand that obviously has a certain professionalism to it,
Mhm.
but also like we are humans and we're fun people as
Yeah.
well, you know.
I think it's you've got to get that out there because people want to work with people that they think they'd want to hang out with
Right.
outside of just, building a house or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Our as golfers, our thing is would I spend 4 hours on a cart with that person?
It's
You know,
100%.
like, and
Yes, that's the litmus test.
yeah, I mean, that is the most captive your audience is ever
Yeah.
gonna be. And also, like, if I
Yep.
really don't like that person or if they're a cheating scumbag, you know, maybe
Yeah.
I don't want to be on a, you
Yeah.
know, so
100%. Yeah.
no, it's funny. I never golfed before and recently obsessed in the last 2.5 years now. And but it's just so true, like the amount of things you can learn from somebody on a golf course.
Oh,
So
for sure.
I
Because
relate to that a lot.
and
But
especially you get some bush lights flowing, and
oh yeah.
you're learning everything you need to
The
know.
real person
Uh huh.
comes out pretty
Yeah.
quick.
Yep.
How they deal
What their
with,
temper's like,
yeah,
everything,
for
absolutely
sure.
everything.
Absolutely. So, one last thing on the, I guess, growing your pages or whatever on social,
Yeah.
friends and family. Did you get pushback from people like, Joe, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? Like, this
Not
is
really.
stupid.
No. I mean, everybody that knows me, especially all my family knows. I mean, I've always just been this way. Like
Yeah.
I just don't give a shit what other people think.
Right.
Like, and that's just how I will always be. Like, you
Yeah.
can, if you want to like me, you can like me. If you don't, you don't. I'm not going to change myself to have just for you to like me.
Yeah.
Is
I
the
love
best way of
that.
it. It's just going to be authentic 100% of the
That's
time.
that's gonna be a clip.
And I think that is what I think everybody should do that. Like, there's too many. You scroll through Facebook or whatever it is all the time. And there's just too many people that are. The best way I put it is, I would rather not be liked for my authentic self than not be liked for trying to be the person you think
Yeah.
I would want to be.
I always used to say I would like I strive to be respected versus liked.
100%.
And not even necessarily professionally related. I always thought that if that was kind of my approach, that then I'm not trying to be outside myself.
Yeah.
Like you know, maybe first the respect comes, then the like comes later.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I love that. I think the fact that I think what I've learned today is it sounds like the whole blind pig thing is something that you did for yourself. You
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
didn't do it just to try to get the
Yeah.
views or to get
No.
people to like you or
Uh-uh.
to maybe get a free bottle of Blanton's.
Yeah.
Like you literally did it because it's your passion, you enjoy it. So I think
Just
that's
wanted to do
awesome.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the best way to put it.
All right, we got to shoot the shit about some of these influencers
Yeah.
because there's people out there that make you not like the word. And
Well,
for
it's not. I don't. It's not that I don't. I'll never forget like the first time that somebody said that. So I was on a trip to Kentucky. We were in Louisville, and then a guy had messaged me, and this guy actually lives in Ames now. He teaches at
Okay.
Iowa State. So it kind of came full circle, and it almost came full circle in a sense of doing his mortgage as well. We can dive in. So it kind of came full circle. But he was there on a bachelor party. He was sending me messages asking where they should go and whatnot. And I gave him some ideas. And then me and my buddies were sitting in this bar, and then this group of fucking rowdy dudes just roll through the door. They were at whatever the Louisville, like the minor league baseball game was. Um, and then he walks up. He goes, "Holy shit, guys! This is that influencer guy I was telling you about." I'm like, "Oh fuck, I hate it." Just I don't know what about the word I don't like,
yeah,
and maybe it's. I've always said I'm not an influencer. I just like to have fun.
you don't want the perception of you to be
I'm not
anything that you're
trying
not.
to
Yeah.
influence people to
Yeah.
do things, which I get. That's not the core of an influencer, but yeah. Then we shot the shit with them, and then he actually, I think he grew up maybe in Ames, moved back to Ames. They ended up paying cash for the house, so didn't need a mortgage. But he reached out. He goes, "Hey," and I've seen him several times since that trip, just at events and whatnot. But no, I don't.
when I to that point though of like your intent isn't to try to persuade somebody's opinion. It's
Yeah.
not you're not trying to influence them in their decisions on
Yep.
whatever. Um, other than everybody should build a house. I wanna make sure
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
clear,
Yeah.
and then they
And
should
everybody should take
should
out a
have
mortgage.
and then
Yeah.
they should yeah, exactly, and then they should potentially have a secret room or something that we
Yeah.
can no, but it's, yeah, like, if that's not your intent, you hate I'm the type where people say, like, they don't care what other people think, and I think you kinda mentioned that, like, you're gonna do your own thing.
Yeah.
I I care to a certain level of just there's certain things that I feel strongly about myself, like my moral code,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
does bother me a little bit if people don't know me or like think other than that of me based on something that I didn't intend to come across.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I don't know if I said that like well enough
No. Yeah.
to
Yeah. Yep.
articulate it, but
Yep.
if that's not my intent and you get this wrong image of me, like wear
And
a
that's yeah.
backwards hat sometimes, and I
Yeah.
kind of just look like a fucking douche sometimes, I guess, like, you could
Yeah.
have this perception.
Yeah.
I'm a dumb farm kid from
Yep.
North Central Iowa,
Yep.
And to your point, like, I like to have fun with business, have a
Yeah.
high energy, so
The I think the influencer part that I don't like is like the people that, like we talked about Grant Cardone earlier, or like people that are taking it to a level that are just literally just saying the most off the wall shit that
just to get
doesn't really even make any sense, just to get views or just to do things of that sort.
when I first started talking to people about doing this podcast was, like, I think probably 60% of them were just like, "Oh, podcast,
Yeah.
like, you're one of those guys now," and I was like,
Yeah,
"Hear
yeah,
me
yeah.
out. I'm
Because
not."
podcasts, I mean, in the past 5 years, that's been
Yeah.
everybody's doing it.
I was like, "Hear me out, though. The spin on it is I just want to basically video and record audio on conversations that I'm already having with people.
Yeah,
Like these are conversations that you and I would
yeah,
literally we never had the chance to
yeah.
yet or haven't made the time
If
to,
the
but
mics were off or the cameras,
we
the
would be
same
having this
conversation would happen.
conversation.
Yeah,
Like I'd be picking your brain and we'd be talking about this stuff. And I
yeah,
was like, I just want to capture that. I think a lot of people just immediately are like, oh, great. He's going to tell us how to build a construction
yeah,
company and how to build
yeah,
houses. And it's like, no, I'm not going to preach to anybody.
yeah.
Like, yeah, that whole thing.
Because there are a ton that way, and it's you know it fits for certain people, and certain
Yeah.
people get you know stuff out of it, but
I'm very
I don't think
self-aware.
it's as authentic of a
Right.
conversation as if you're just shooting shit
Yeah.
about really anything.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
to be self-aware enough, I mean, I'm 32 years old.
Hmm.
Showtime is relatively new-ish as a company. Um, it's new, like for a home building company
Yep.
to be building the houses we are.
Yep.
A lot of people probably don't realize. I mean, Matt Buman's been building houses for 20 years, who's
Yep.
spearheading all of the builds and coordinating and organizing.
Yep.
And Sean and I are running the back end business and then doing stuff like this, obviously, just to kind of grow our network. But yeah, by no means was I ever having the intent to just like sit on here and preach to people
Yeah.
about how to build a brand,
Yeah.
even or
Yeah.
whatever. But
Yeah.
so just talking with people that have done it, learning from other people. I talked to one guy that's technically a competitor of ours,
Yeah.
and told him that like I was going to start doing this and having guests on. He's like, dude, I want to come on. He's
Yeah.
like, I think there's so many things and we actually, we were at a HBA, a Home Builders Association event. And I mean, we ended up talking for like 45 minutes just
Yep.
that night about how we handle, stress with our family when we go home from
Yeah.
work as business owners and all those things. And he's like, man, I guarantee there's people out there that can relate to that. And maybe they just
100%.
need to hear
Yeah.
us talk about it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that stuff's that stuff's fun too. So,
Yeah.
uh, Grant Cardone and Gary Vee were probably the first two that I ever saw videos of on
Yeah.
YouTube. When I made my mind shift to, hey, there's got to be more for me in life,
Yeah.
when I was like 27 ish, um, I was kind of hyped by Grant,
Yeah.
and I don't know if I should be ashamed to admit that now, but I was. But it was just like his energy and his passion I could tell were there, and
Yeah.
he was, and he wasn't afraid to speak his mind.
Yeah.
Now, when I actually started listening to him try to like do math and like teach people, I was just like, well, that math doesn't math. Like, what
Yeah.
are we talking about? That's so I like my joke is always Cardone math.
Yeah.
But is there anybody though that you've seen that you're like, I relate to that guy?
I mean,
Like inspired.
I used to be big into Gary Vee and his videos. He's kind of
He wore on me.
he's getting a little Cardone-ish at this. Like he posted something the other day where it was something about like high school doesn't matter or something crazy. Where like I get the intent from him being an entrepreneur is like there's so much more out there. You don't need to go to college. You don't need to do this, that, or the other. But like that's not for everybody, just as going to college and doing whatever isn't for everybody. So it's like you got to also be cognizant of your entire audience and not ostracize,
You can't come out
half
and
of it.
say college is stupid, but you can say if you choose not to go to college or if you didn't go,
Yeah.
there is a path out there for
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
You know, and I think early on he did a great job of that, and I think that's why I adhered to him so much was he talked about like the ROI of a basketball for LeBron is
Yep.
different than him, you know.
Yep.
And I actually got a chance to see him live in 2018 out in Vegas. And that was like the height of when I was like in all the like I was in it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then you get to
uh-huh.
see Gary and
Uh-huh.
it was awesome. But yeah, to that point, I mean, I don't listen to his videos really anymore, but I think at that point in my life it spoke to me and
Yeah.
I could relate to it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Some of these, I don't know. Anybody now that is just saying like this is what you have to do or you can't do this,
Yeah.
generally speaking, is
Uh-huh.
just like, okay.
No, yeah, you
like,
can't.
shut up.
No.
For sure. Well, cool, man. Is there anything else you wanna that you want to chat about, or I think I pretty much hit on everything I needed to. We've been back here for a while. What do you think? You feeling good about it? Is everything still on? Cool. Yeah, we talked for an hour and 20 minutes or a half. Well, man, I think that was awesome.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
What do you want to just real quick talk about this at all? Is it anything important like locally that you want to touch on? Or
This is so Cedar Ridge out of Swisher, out of the Iowa City area. They are the largest distillery in Iowa, and I mean they're taking the country by storm. Especially, they're doing a lot of American single malt stuff now. That's winning awards like all over the place. So they are going to blow up even more than they have. This particular pick is one we did probably maybe October of last year. And we went over to Cedar Ridge, and Murphy Quint, who's their head distiller, knew that I liked their double barrel bourbon. So it's aged and then finished again in a new charred oak barrel. They had never done a single barrel pick of it. And we're over there. He goes, "Hey, if you want to do a barrel pick of double barrel, I'll let you." I said, "You don't have to fucking show me anything else. We're going to do that."
Yep.
And it's one of my favorites. Like, that's my favorite offering from them. And then the fact that he let me do the first one they've ever done is pretty legit.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Man. That's very cool.
So yeah, I think if anything, like the social media stuff has kind of gotten me into some of those avenues. Like we're going to Kentucky on Sunday to do barrel picks, bringing some back that have never been in the state of Iowa before, and just me knowing the distillery through social media has given us the opportunity to go down and do it. We've been to Buffalo Trace several times. We're going again this year. We've been to Heaven Hill. We're going to go to Maker's Mark. We've done a ton.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Hell
Like
yeah.
that's, in my opinion, like I've never really tried to monetize anything. Like I've even put up a shop to sell these shirts, and I sell them for $1 more than my cost because my son drew this logo, and I'm like, I got to pay him for his artwork. So I've never like tried to monetize anything because I've had fun doing it. Anything I'm doing because I want to and because I have fun doing it. And then B, just kind of some of those perks of getting to go do barrel picks and go to the distilleries and meet all these great people and whatnot, is awesome enough for me. But I'm sure at some point, as it grows, opportunities to monetize it become available. But I've always said that I never want to be in a position where I'm making money off of people that are following me.
Yeah.
I want to make money off of companies.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Let them pay you to advertise.
I don't want to ask followers for money. And there's people that do it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
If that's the route they want to go, perfectly fine. But I just don't want to. Yeah. No.
Well, thank you so much for the gift.
Absolutely.
We'll definitely have to invite you over maybe when we open it up,
Yeah.
and if you can make it, and otherwise if you can, I guess we're just gonna have to taste it.
You're just gonna have to house the whole thing and then post a video and let people call you alcoholic.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome, dude.
Sweet.